All right, we're in our little grow space here, and or where we start our plants and indoors. And I want to talk to you real quick about a victory garden on the most basic levels. And so I want to cover some things like what crops to grow, first of all, and kind of how to grow them. You know, if you're going to start from seed, or you're going to buy plants, that type of thing. What are you going to fertilize with? Or are you going to fertilize them? Are you going to use compost teas? Are you going to use organic fertilizers? That kind of thing. Okay, so first of all, crops to grow. This is kind of interesting and throughout history, and we look at the victory garden, and you can actually look this up. It's like what did people grow in their victory gardens, and you could probably guess most of them if you've been around gardening for a while, or if you've done some yourself. But they obviously grew a lot of things that are going to be sustaining. They're not only going to be sustaining, they're going to be easy to grow, and then they're things that culturally people like to eat. Okay, so they grew a lot of potatoes and carrots and onions and greens and things like that. So of course, tomatoes and peppers. Okay, so those things were all very prominent in the victory gardens, and it's no different today. If you go to a typical vegetable garden in America today, you're going to find a lot of the same things. And so first off, I would say is like, one, you got to understand the area that you're growing in. Okay, what's your climate? How long is your season? You know, do you even have 90 or 100 days of frost-free time in your climate? Okay, so you need to do season extension techniques to be able to even get there. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't grow things, but if you have a really, really short season, you need to consider that. So most people start with, and they say, well, grow things that you like to eat. And that is great advice for sure. But again, if you don't have a way to grow those things, the things you like to eat, where you are, then it's not a good idea to grow them. You have to grow what's both going to work for your area, and then also what you guys like to eat. So things that are real simple, like greens, different types of lettuces, spinach, kale, that kind of stuff can grow in most areas, and it's more short season. So you can grow it in the cool, and you can grow it in a quick amount of time. So that's always a good thing to start with, is grow some greens. Not only that, they're nutritionally dense. They're not caloric dense, but they're nutritionally dense. Okay, so they've got a lot of vitamins and minerals in them, and so they're good to grow in your victory garden. And then other things, okay, if you can pull off tomatoes and peppers in your area, then I say do it. And you like them, absolutely do it. Or potatoes, or whatever is going to work in your area. I also recommend that if you're just starting out, that you just stick to a handful. Okay, stick to 5 or 6 things until you get a feel for your area, where your garden, your climate, your solar aspect, the whole 9 yards, is that you look at just a handful of items. We all want to grow, 20, 30, 40, 50 different things, but sometimes starting out with just 5 or 6 is a good idea. Okay, so again, what kind of crops? Well, it could be, depending on your area, it could be potatoes and carrots and greens and tomatoes and peppers. It could be beets, it could be radishes. Again, keep it simple. And I'm sticking to mainly vegetables here, and I absolutely, we grow a lot of herbs, perennial herbaceous herbs and annual herbs for medicinal purposes, but also they're so great to grow around vegetables, so don't be afraid to throw in some herbs as well, flowers, that kind of thing. Those all work together. They will attract beneficial insects and all of that good stuff. And so, again, if nothing else, then grow your 5 or 6 vegetables. But if you can throw those other things in as well, do it. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into how you actually do that. Okay, let's talk about finding the seeds and or plants that you want. Okay, I'm going to focus on seeds right now because I've got some seed catalogs in front of me and some seed packets in front of me. Okay, so let's take this as an example. Let's, again, greens. I like greens because they're really easy to grow. They're fast, and then you can plant them in succession. so that you always have fresh greens. Okay, so at least through most of the year, and even into the summer, if you do it right, if you start finding some cooler little pockets that are shaded in the afternoons and things like that. Okay, but let's take a look at, I love mesclun mixes. So you can see all the different mixes up here. This is a great place to start. But if you read down here, we have a lot of information in these seed not only packets, but also the seed catalogs. So if we look at the mesclun mix, 30 days to harvest, and you can get multiple cuts off of this. And so this is a European culinary delight. It's got a mix of red and green leaf lettuces, arugula, endive, chives, and pak choi. Okay, so that's a really nice mix, very healthy, and you can plant them in succession. So not only can you get multiple cuts off of one bunch, you could plant some of this like every week. Okay, so you can plant it every week. You're planting a new set of this, so that you can always be in lots of greens, or at least a good chunk of the year you could be in greens in the early part of the season, and then again in the fall, and then maybe even in the summer if you do it right and can actually shade at that point. Now, if we take a look at a seed packet is also going to tell us a lot of information. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'll kind of go through it. So in this case, this is tomato. It's just an heirloom tomato, kind of a beefsteak-like tomato for slicing. And this says start indoors in a sunny location 6 weeks prior to warm weather, meaning 6 weeks prior to last frost. Okay. It says 7 to 10 days to germination. Okay. Planting depth 1/4 inch. Days to harvest 70. Okay. Spacing, it even gives you spacing as far as rows and plants. It even gives you a little map here, and it tells you kind of when they think you're going to be able to put these outside. And of course, it's in blue there, and that's May to June. For us, I'd say here in North Idaho, most people won't do it until at the very earliest, late May, and maybe even the 1st of June. Okay, unless you have a hoop house, a cold climate greenhouse, or something like that, which you can put it in, much earlier, depending on that situation. Okay, so there's a lot of good information in seed packets and also in these seed catalogs. Okay, one more thing on say seed packets or growing. They'll usually give you a days to harvest on here. So in this case, this tomato is 70. Now that implies a couple things, right? So for plants to grow, obviously they need light, they need water, and they'll need some type of nutrient, okay, right, in the soil. But they also need heat. Okay, I'm talking about tomatoes specifically. So if you have water, the proper amount of water, and it has plenty of sunlight, and there's nutrient in the soil, and it's bioavailable, but it's really cool, and the soil temperature is low, and it's just cold, they're going to grow at a very, very slow rate, and you might not get ripe tomatoes, which can be a problem here in North Idaho. So when it says 70, it's implying all those things that are available. Okay, so in certain locations, it might not be 70, it might be 85 or something like that. And that's why specifically for tomatoes and peppers, think about a way that you can put them in a location where they're going to get a little extra heat. Maybe it's up against a southern wall that can absorb a lot of heat and then radiate that heat back out. Or maybe it's a hoop house or a cold frame, whatever the case may be. Think about stuff like that as well. But again, when you take a look at all of the crops that you want to grow, take a look at that time frame. Like, how are you going to get it? Like, people are getting certain types of watermelon, for example, that take 100 days to maturity. That's very difficult in a lot of places up here in North Idaho. Okay, enough of that. If we take a look at growing in these little greenhouse planters that you can get. These are actually really great. Okay, I like these. They're about $7 at the big box stores. And you can use these 2 years at least, maybe even 3 seasons before they start falling apart. And so for $7, you can have, say 2 to 3 years worth of the ability to grow. And these even have their little discs, the little peat moss discs that you add water and they grow up. And I'll show you one here in a minute. And they just make it super simple. Okay, they just make it so easy. There's no reason not to start. Okay, so if you don't have your own system set up and you don't like to do it this way, I say start with something like this just to make it simple and easy. Now let's talk about organic fertilizers that you can use. There is a ton of them. I have my favorite, and that's here, Dr. Earth. This is what I like to use. And if somebody said to me, tell me one organic fertilizer that I can use on my plants, I don't want 5, 10 different things. I don't want all this other stuff to add and just one. This would be the one thing that I would recommend. Okay, it's organic, all-purpose fertilizer, 555. Embedded in these fertilizers, and why I like them so much, are things like beneficial bacteria and beneficial mycorrhizae. All right, why do I recommend that? I recommend it because this builds life into the soil. It's got that beneficial bacteria and fungi that you can use to add it to the soil, and it's going to help kickstart that biological activity that hopefully is occurring in the soil. You also want to do things like add compost, compost teas if you want to get fancy, and there's all kinds of other things with fermented things with Korean natural farming or Japanese natural farming and all that kind of advanced stuff. Or you can just go with something like Dr. Earth until you get real comfortable, and that's what I recommend if you're just starting out. Okay, so let's take a look at some actual plants. Okay, so I just wanted to show you real quick here. I've got some things growing, and we usually do starts every year, and we also are growing plants and stuff outside, and we'll do root division and take cuttings and do all those kinds of things. But this is what I have growing inside right now. In fact, those are all root cuttings that are coming up now from comfrey, actually. Okay, but up here, this is all started from seed and just basics, and there's different things like there's watermelon and a couple different kinds of basil and some mesclun mixes and beans and tomatoes and peppers and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of them are just now coming up, so you can't see a whole lot. But does it take a fancy system? No, it absolutely does not. Do you need specific grow lights that emit at certain wavelengths? No, you do not. You can do this with shop lights, and many people have done it. And in fact, I got this thing a little too high, but I kind of have to, balance it out with these plants. But it's working. It's working. It'll do the work I need it to do, and it'll be ready for me to be able to plant outside when the time comes, which is probably a little ways out. But some of these can go in a little cooler weather, and some of these are going to go into a hoop house, and some of these are going to go into cold frames. Okay, so that's all kind of planned out, but it's really simple to do. You can start your victory garden very simply. You can go get these things with these little plugs, and that's kind of what they look like once they have water in them. They kind of grow up to about 4 or 5 times the original size of the disc. Put some seeds in it, keep it watered, put it under some lights, even if it's a shop light. Or if you've got a greenhouse or a place where you can get some sunshine, that works too. But just get started. And it's one way that you can develop a significant level of self-sufficiency, confidence, and morale boosting to be able to do. So I highly recommend you start your own victory garden. Oh, sorry, one more thing. One last thing. This is on organization. Okay, what I like to do, and again, there's lots of ways to do this. I like to number, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can probably see that. I like to number on the side of these trays. It's real simple, 1 through whatever it is, 12, etc. Depending on how many rows you're going to use, etc. And then you just make a key, okay? Take a key, then it matches there, and it's pretty simple. Okay, and that way the little popsicle sticks and different things that people will use don't come out, and then you have no idea which plants are what. This is not perfect, but it works fine for us, and we've been using it for many years, and for the most part, it keeps us squared away.